All right, we're continuing to talk about the history of Taoism, and we're using this book, An Essential Guide by Eva Wong. And now we're going to talk about the rise of mystical Taoism. And I love the quote she starts with. It's pretty freaky stuff. The entire quote is, "The world of Shangxing Taoism, a world where guardian spirits live inside the human body, a world where mystics fly to the sky and journey among the stars, a world where people absorb the essence of the sun and moon to cultivate immortality, a world where the highest attainment in life is to merge with the Tao in bliss and ecstasy." So that's a prelude to the fact this is going to be some pretty freaky stuff. Shangxing Taoism is often called mystical Taoism. Modern views now recognize that to understand mysticism, we need to understand the nature of the mystical experience. We've talked about this with other religions, but Eva Wong goes into depth that I think is useful. But to equate, she does make the point that to equate the beliefs and practices of mysticism found in the Judeo-Christian religions, or the Abrahamic religions, or even the ancient Greek religions, with Taoist mysticism is misleading. Chinese history and cultural background create a form of mysticism that is unique among the world's spiritual traditions. And she looks at the different features that scholars of religion identify for mysticism. Number one is the cognitive component. This is the belief system and worldview of mysticism. There are several beliefs that form the core of mysticism. First, mystics believe there is an underlying unity behind all things. This is commonly called the One and is the true reality. Second, this One or underlying reality cannot be perceived or known by ordinary experience. Third, this One is present in us, and by realizing it internally, we can be united with everything around us. Finally, the goal of the human life is to achieve unity with this One. The emotional component, feelings that accompany the mystical experience, bliss, joy, ecstasy, sexual excitement, and intoxication have all been used to describe the feelings of mystical experience. Three is the perceptive component, any visual, auditory, or other sensations that accompany the mystical experience. A heightened awareness of the surroundings and of auditory and visual images is experienced when the underlying reality of the One is directly perceived without the intrusion of rational thinking. Four is the behavioral component, actions that induce the mystical experience or are the result of it. The mystical experience involves action. Some actions function to induce the experience, such as dervish dancing in Sufism or Islamic mysticism, body postures in yoga, the rituals of Shangxing Taoism. Other actions result from the mystical experience, such as walking through fire, speaking in special languages. There are many similarities between mysticism and shamanism. Each involves an ecstatic experience, transformed perception, feats of power, and a union with a force that takes the individual to a more complete existence than the mundane. But mysticism and shamanism are not identical, according to Wong. That's an important point. She says that what distinguishes mysticism from shamanism is the nature of the union between the practitioner and the sacred powers. In mysticism, the union is between two parts of ourselves, the cosmic and the mundane, the self with a little s and the self with a big S. The greater or cosmic power is part of us. Whether we are separated from it because of cultural and social influence or because of the dominance of analytical thinking, it is still inside us. Therefore, one function of mysticism is that of undoing the conditions that separate ourselves from ourselves. Shamanism, on the other hand, sees the greater or cosmic power as part of the external world. Thus, it has to be invited to enter the shaman before a union can be achieved. Sometimes the power comes to visit the shaman. At other times, the shaman goes to the spirits by flying to their dwellings in the stars or journeying into their homes in the depths of the earth. In each case, the sacred power that the shamans wish to be united with is outside, not within. Shangxing Taoism, with its belief in that the deities or cosmic powers are resonant in the human body, identifies it as a mystical practice, not shamanistic. However, the shamanic influence in Taoism has always been strong. Its imprint on Shangxing Taoism is unmistakable. In fact, This unique form of Taoism has both the features of mysticism and shamanism, the belief in the deities within and the journey to other worlds. Now, Shangxing Taoism is reputed to have been founded by Lady Wei Watsun. We're just going to call her Lady Wei. She's an important figure in Taoism. Just during the early part of the Qin dynasty. Lady Wei received a revelation from the guardians of the Tao, these central deities that emerged of Taoism, and recorded their teachings in a book called the Shangqing Wangting Neiqing Yuqing, which translates as the Yellow Court Jade Classic of Internal Images of the High Pure Realm, and 288 of the Common Era. However, the two most important ideas of Shangqing Taoism, the notion of keeping the one meaning the Tao, and the belief that there are guardian spirits in the body, those were known as early as the Han Dynasty. A commentary on the Tao De Jing by Ho Shang Kung, who is known as the River Sage, believed to have been written in the Han Dynasty, also refers to keeping the one. Now, this is very important. This is a link between the philosophy of the Tao De Jing with this mystical religious Taoism. If people can cultivate the spirit, i.e., this is what this text says: if the people can cultivate the spirit, i.e., the one, they will not die. By spirit, I mean the spirits of the five viscera. In the liver is the human spirit, in the lungs is the soul, in the heart is the seat of the immortal spirit, in the spleen is the intention, in the kidneys is the generative energy. The five viscera. If the five viscera are injured, then the five spirits will leave. That is, the idea of keeping the one appeared in a commentary on a text of classical or philosophical Taoism is significant. It provides this continuity I was referring to between classical Taoist philosophy and Taoist mysticism. So modern scholars or thinkers tend to, take apart the philosophy of Laozi with this crazy religious, magical Taoist mysticism, but you really can't. The principal ideas of Shangqing Taoism were present well before the Qin dynasty. Why did it have to wait until the Qin and the southern dynasties to become a major movement in Taoism? To understand this, we must look at the lineage of Shangqing Taoism and the transmission of its scriptures in the Qin and southern dynasties. Lady Wei is reputed to have been the founder of Shangqing Taoism, as I mentioned, but it really was Yang Xi who is responsible for its spreading and teachings. The Shangqing texts tell us that it was Yang Xi that received a vision from Lady Wei, who had become an immortal. She's a famous immortal. We'll talk about that later. And then wrote, quote unquote, the scriptures under the influence of a cannabis-induced trance. The scriptures were then transmitted to Su Hui and Su Mi, father and son. The early Shangqing scriptures, in addition to the Wangting, Neiqing, Yuqing that I mentioned earlier, are the Tai Shang Po Wen, the sacred writ of the Most High, Ta Tum Qin Qing, the true scripture of the Great Cavern, and the Pasu Yin Shu, the hidden book of the Eight Simplicities. You see these texts proliferating. The early proponents of the Shangqing Taoism were related to each other by clan or marriage. It's very incestuous. All were members of established families in southeast China. Many of them were descendants of the fallen aristocracy of the state of Wu of the Three Kingdoms. Lady Wei was the daughter of a high-ranking priest of celestial teachers, Taoism, and was herself initiated into the priestly order. So it has its roots in more orthodox forms of Taoism. However, two features of Shangqing Taoism distinguished it from celestial teachers Taoism. The first was the belief that keeping the one and holding the guardian deities would lead to health and longevity. Orthodox members of the celestial teachers' way were not really sympathetic to the notion of keeping the one as a method of attaining health. They maintained that talismans and incantations were the way to cure illness, good old talismanic magic. The second feature separating Shangqing Taoism from Central Orthodox Taoism, celestial masters, was the use of talismans. The celestial teachers used talismans for curing illness, exorcism, and for protection against malevolent spirits, whereas the Shangqing Taoists used them primarily for invoking and visualizing the deities inside the body and for journeying to other realms of existence. As time went on, um, these differences between the two forms of Taoism overshadowed their similarities, and Shangxing Taoism began to pull away from celestial teachers and become a unique and distinct lineage. However, the separation of Chongqing from Central Orthodox did not invite hostility from the organized branch of religious Taoism, unlike what happened in other cultures, think the Protestant Reformation, um, where mystics' worldview and experience of union with the sacred powers often made them heretics in the eyes of organized religion, especially in Christianity and Islam. In China, this was not the case, and I think there are several reasons for this. First, the Chinese culture had always tolerated diversity in religious and spiritual practices. Most emperors were content to leave religious groups alone as long as they did not have political ambitions. The emperors who favored one religion over the other appointed personal spiritual advisors, but did not attempt to integrate state and religion. Second, there is a saying among Taoists, quote, "In Taoism, there are no heretics, there are only sects." Throughout the history of Taoism, differences in beliefs and practices have produced a diversity of sects that relatively respected and tolerated each other. Another figure, Dao Hongqing, Dao Hongjing, that's the pinyin name, was born in the Sung of the southern dynasties in 456, the Common Era, died in 436. 536, in the Liang dynasty. Dao came from one of the great families of southeast China. His grandfather held a respectable position in the Sung government. When the Sung dynasty fell, frickin' Mongols, and was replaced by the Qi, the Dao family lost its fortunes. However, this is the first fall of the Sung. That's not the Mongols, my bad. Lost its fortunes. However, an emphasis on education and learning was an important part of the family tradition, which, they're Chinese. And Dao Hongjing was brought up in an atmosphere that encouraged the mastering of a wide range of knowledge. During the Southern Qi dynasty, Dao served as a secretary and librarian in the imperial court. His abilities were not recognized by the Qi court, and he was never promoted. Disillusioned, he resigned his post in 492 and decided to pursue the Dao. It is ironic that when Dao Hongjing aspired to rise in politics, success never came, but when he became a Taoist hermit, his fame spread and his advice was sought by kings and nobles. That's Wu Wei in action. When Dao Hongjing settled on Mao Shan, which is Mount Mao, mountain range in today's Jiangsu province in southeast China, he set about collecting and collating the Shangqing scriptures. He wrote down the lineage of the Shangqing Taoism, recorded the authority of its transmission, set up a hierarchy of deities, and documented the structure of administration within the celestial realm. In the hands of Dao, the Taoist pantheon became orderly. His knowledge and learning were vast and deep. In addition to his study of Shangqing teachings, he was interested in physical alchemy, had a laboratory on Mao Shan devoted to research and making of elixirs of immortality. The first emperor of the Liang dynasty was both a friend and patron of Dao's. Dao Hongjing's lab was supported by imperial funds. He was adept at divination, military strategy, astronomy, geology, and metallurgy, and his forges on Mao Shan were famous for crafting some of the best swords of the time. Dao was also a classical scholar, learned in both the Confucian classics and Buddhist scriptures. In literary endeavors, Dao was prolific. He wrote some 80 treatises on scientific and literary subjects. He also was a poet and a skilled practitioner of the martial arts. Basically, he was the Taoist Da Vinci. Given these wide interests, it is natural that Dao Hongqing's breadth was incorporated into his practice of Shangqing Taoism. And Dao Hongjing, Shangqing Taoism took on new dimensions. His interest in alchemy, medicine, and herbs introduced the use of herbs and minerals in the Shangqing methods of cultivating health and longevity. Moreover, he incorporated his knowledge of the I Ching, the Book of Changes, and the divination arts of the Shangqing understanding of the human body and circulation of energy. So let's talk about this idea of the internal universe. According to Shangqing Taoism, the body is a microcosm that reflects the macrocosm. It is filled with deities, spirits, and monsters. When these guardians leave, the body will die. First, of course, is the One, the highest deity, and it's the Tao inside us, basically. Then we have the three Ones, which are the next highest guardian deities, called the Sun Yuan. And then we have spiritual energy, the highest manifestation of the One. We have vital energy, energy associated with breath, generative energy associated with responsible procreation. It's called the water realm. The vital energy, by the way, is called the terrestrial realm, and the spiritual energy, the celestial realm. If the levels of these energies are high, the guardians will appear bright. Health and longevity are assured. If the energies are low, the guardians will appear dull, the body weak or ill. In Shangxing practice, keeping the three ones in the body corresponds to preserving generative, vital, and spirit energy. However, only the One, the capital O, can be embraced, embracing the One, the Tao within us. I guess the Tao version of the Holy Spirit. Then there's something called the Five, which are the spirits that protect the heart, lungs, spleen, kidneys, and liver. And then there are monsters to be avoided. And I'll stop there because it gets quite complex, but you get the idea. The Shangxing external universe is inhabited by many spirits and deities as well. The most important live in the sun, moon, and stars. To the Shangxing Taoist, the celestial bodies are the manifestations of the primordial order of the primordial vapor of the Tao, and the essence of the Tao is carried in their light. Thus, to absorb the essence of the sun, moon, and stars is to swallow the energy of the Tao. According to Shangxing Taoism, the sun contains the essence of yang energy. The moon, of course, is the essence of yin energy. Absorption of the essences of the sun and moon can help nourish the immortal fetus, which is the One is sometimes referred to as the immortal fetus we have to cradle, and strengthen the guardians of the body. Unifying the external and internal universes, ascension, flight, and travel in the celestial realm are ways in which Shangxing Taoists achieve a union with the Tao in the external universe. Ascension represents final union, when the practitioner leaves the mortal realm forever to become an immortal in the high, pure realm. Immortals in the highest caliber ascend to the sky in the physical body and in broad daylight, often in the presence of witnesses. In contrast to ascension, the practitioner's journey to the celestial realm is only temporary departure from the world of ordinary experience, sort of astral projection. There are two stages to the celestial journey: rising to the sky and traveling to the celestial domain. So you see, this is a brief introduction to the history and the tenets of Shangxing or mystical Taoism, and it's pretty crazy stuff.